G'day ladies and gents, and welcome back to DCS World with Mags, and welcome aboard the SA-342 Gazelle. This French light transport light attack helicopter was added to DCS just a couple of months ago. I actually did a first impressions on it when it first came out, and I did say in that video that it is important to remember that this is a aircraft that is still in development. This module is not finished, it still has additions to add, there are still weapon systems to go on, and of course the flight model is still being tweaked. Now, some of these tweaks have come through. I found the Gazelle is probably a little bit easier to fly now than it was when it first came out. It is still a very touchy helicopter. I said in my first impressions that of all the helicopters that are currently available in DCS, the Gazelle is probably the most difficult to fly in regards to combat duties. Just generally flying around the map is pretty okay. The autopilot handles a lot of the flight stability on its own while you're flying around, just will automatically take control of torque and other aspects of the helicopter in order to keep yourself in a smooth, stable flight. However, takeoff and landings can be a little to the touchy side, and so can weapons deployment. Trying to keep the helicopter stable for deploying at speed, or sometimes even more difficult, is slowing the helicopter down and getting it into a stable position to engage auto hover so you can deploy missiles against armoured targets on the ground. And this most certainly is still the case, but it does feel a little bit better than it did when it first came out. And honestly, I think it's always going to be that way. I've done a little bit more reading on the Gazelle since I did that first impressions, and have found that it was actually known to be a fairly touchy helicopter. Part of this was the fact that it was only around 900 kilos empty, fully loaded with ATGMs. This is only an 1800 kilo helicopter. So the Gazelle features a really powerful power plant and a really light airframe, even by helicopter standards. I mean, just to put this into perspective for you, most people wouldn't consider the Huey to be an overly large helicopter. It would be moderately sized. Yet the Huey is around 2.3 tons empty. It's nearly 3 times the weight of the Gazelle, and has a significantly lower power to weight ratio. I strongly expect even once the flight model is fully finished, the Gazelle is still going to rank amongst the most difficult helicopters in DCS to fly. Not in terms of systems management, the KA-50 still holds the title for that one, and I will show you how that thing operates at some stage in the future, and it gives me nightmares. I'm still not very good at it, that's why it has not appeared on the channel so far. But the Gazelle, yeah, it's a bit of a wild machine. When you want to stay still and stationary and stable for missile deployment, it wants to run as fast as it can. When you want it to aim in a nice stable direction to line up that missile shot, it'll want to twist and torque and rotate its way off center. And oh, learning to engage the auto hover, that is so much fun. You are looking at one of the lightest, or no, not one of, the lightest helicopter in DCS that probably has one of the highest power to weight ratios, and you have to bring it to under 18 kilometers an hour and under 60 meters of vertical movement in order to be able to even engage the auto hover. But the maximum range on the ATGMs is only around 4.3 kilometers, which puts you inside of AAA range on most of the ground vehicles you'll be facing inside of DCS, unless you position your Gazelle very carefully before the engagement. So if you're not very careful, you are going to be under enemy fire while you're trying to engage the auto hover in order to deploy the ATGMs. On the other side, once you've gotten past this, the weapon system, as I spoke about in the first impressions, incredibly easy to use. Takes about 10 seconds to turn everything on. It is very simple to control. You've got to wait 3 minutes after you fire everything up in order for the cameras and everything to cool down so you're ready for weapons deployment, which is why I actually powered up my weapon systems on the pad before taking off, so everything would be ready to rock and roll by the time we hit Las Vegas. And once that's done, once your cooldown is complete and everything is turned on, it is literally point and click. Once you've spotted where the enemy convoy is, it's just get the helicopter into position for deployment, and once you're in that position, it's just put the camera on it and hit the fire button, and that is it. So, speaking of the city, we are flying up to Las Vegas. What the hell are we doing here, and why are our weapon systems armed? Well, I wanted to do something a little bit interesting. I wanted to blow some vehicles up inside of Las Vegas, so I set up a little combat zone in a custom mission in the center of the city. Currently, there are about 6 groups of allied SWAT engaging 6 groups of, well, we'll call them an unknown group, but they're Soviet ground troops. There are 3 Abrams moving into the area to engage that will not engage the zone until you have cleared it of the enemy tanks, and yes, there are enemy tanks. There's 2 T-55s parked on the Las Vegas Strip, along with a armoured vehicle that has anti-air capability. Now, I have discovered a small problem with making custom missions that are ground attack, and that is that I sort of feel like I'm cheating while I'm playing them. When you create a custom mission against enemy fighters, so fighter versus fighter combat, you can know the number of enemy fighters that are going to be on the red team, but you don't know what they're going to do. The AI takes control from there. With ground forces, once you've placed them on the map, you know exactly what they're going to do, where they're going to go, and how they're going to engage, because you programmed all that into them, which is a little frustrating, because it means I know exactly what's going to happen next. Now, I actually took a little bit of time when I was designing this mission. I put the combat zone on the corner of Audrey Street and Las Vegas Boulevard, near Billy's Las Vegas Hotel and Casino. That's actually the building the Soviet forces are protecting, or invading, or trying to control, across the road from the Dancing Fountains. Now, I did this deliberately because it gives the appearance of multiple avenues of attack in order to complete the mission, but in reality, there is only one position you can sit in, have access to the 3 targets you have, that is the anti-aircraft vehicle, or the armoured vehicle with the gun that can engage aircraft, or specifically your helicopter, and the 2 T-55 tanks, while still avoiding return fire from that anti-aircraft vehicle and keeping yourself out of sight of the Soviet man-pads that are based in amongst the troops that are guarding the hotel. So yay, a little bit of problem solving to work out exactly what the best way to attack these vehicles is. The problem is I'm the one who placed them, so I know where the avenue of attack is in the first place, and it's right here next to the Trome, or the Trump building. Activating auto hover in this position gives us a direct look straight down, well, most of the Las Vegas Strip, and it allows us to see all 3 of our target vehicles, which all 3 of them are on screen right now. Dead center of the screen right now, you can see the T-55, and you'll see to its top right hand corner there is the second T-55, and then just up to the left you'll see, slightly obscured, is the armoured vehicle. Now, we're about 2.4 kilometres out, which is perfectly acceptable firing range, and missile 1 away. And we can see the missile tracking in on the target at the moment. There is a little bit of distance to cover here, and boom, impact 1. Alright, so realign to line up the second T-55, and it appears to be moving down to just behind the wreck of the first one. Now we're going to flick over to the pilot's position at the moment. It's the easiest way to get access to the dial for weapons selection, so we're going to switch over to pylon 1, which I probably should have used in the first place. Line it back up. Once again, we'll confirm range. Missile is tracking, and there it is, impact 2, second T-55 is out. Back over to the pilot's position. We're going to select pylon 3 this time. And back over, and now we're going to adjust to the upper left, and we'll line this up on the armoured vehicle. Now this is going to be an interesting shot. I'm pretty sure pylon 3 comes from the right hand side. I hope it does, because if it doesn't, it's probably going to hit that billboard on the left instead of actually hitting our target. Range is good, and release. And once again we can see the missile moving down, and it looks like it's made it past the billboard. And target 3 eliminated. So with the elimination of those 3 ground units, that should give the Abrams, if I program them correctly, the trigger that they need in order to start moving in. And at that point, the SWAT units should also start closing in on the building automatically, and a gunfight should start up around the basis of the building. So from this point, we'll disengage auto hover and start moving away. The auto hover is actually surprisingly difficult to get to turn off sometimes. You've got to throw the helicopter enough that it will automatically switch itself off, put the helicopter outside of its own parameters, and yeah, sometimes it sticks and doesn't want to let go. For those who don't quite understand, there is no on or off button for the auto hover. There is only an on button. Think of it sort of like the cruise control inside of your car. When you activate auto hover, the aircraft will stabilize itself and remain in a hovering position. However, to turn it off, you actually have to manipulate the controls yourself, and it will automatically disengage auto hover when you do so. Sometimes it doesn't want to do that, however. So we're just passing around the back of the casinos at the moment. We're checking out our right-hand side to see if we can survey some of our handiwork and see if we can see the gunfight starting up. And there it is. There's a smoke pillar from the APC and 2 from the tanks. I'm probably a little high here at the moment. I can't see any of the soldiers or any of the gunfight taking place, but it is most certainly down there. I don't want to get too close anyway. There are man-pads still active down in that zone, and the ground troops will fire at a helicopter. And as I mentioned before, the Gazelle is extremely light. It tends not to react too well to bullets. Actually, at this point, I think it's probably just a wise idea to take the Gazelle back home. The ATGM, if the scripts have all worked as they're meant to at this point, the ground forces should be in a fairly close engagement. And if I deploy an ATGM against enemy infantry, I'm likely going to kill some of my own, and that's probably not such a great idea. The Abrams as well will be providing cover by this point in time, and there's no other armoured vehicles to destroy, so maybe I need to step this up a bit. Maybe I need to make this a little bit more interesting. Multiple waves of helicopters, and we'll start stacking ground units all the way through Las Vegas. Anyways, ladies and gents, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for watching. Click like if you do, subscribe if you want to see more. Fly smart, fly safe, and I'll catch you in the skies.